We need the encouragement of being together as one body, and even more so as we eagerly await the day when the Lord will return.
A very warm welcome to Be Encouraged.
Today we hear how water bought in the UK is helping orphans in Africa.
You're no good in saving a child's life unless you give the child something to live for.
And we're going to hear two stories of people whose lives have been changed by God.
And we're going to see how good comes out of bad when we trust in God. Now, ladies, do you like being pampered once in a while? I certainly do. And recently, I met Lorraine, who did my nails.
Last year, when we had the McMillan coffee morning, I did Jan's nails like I'm doing this year. We met for the first time. We started talking about our Christian life, and Jan very kindly quietly prayed for me afterwards for my health. And I just want to say, 1 year on, I weigh nearly 5 stone less, and my diabetes has subsided to such a degree I'm hardly on any medication now, and all of my other health issues are getting better every single week, and my doctors are absolutely ecstatic, and so am I. And I just want to thank God for working his magic in his way that he does when two Christians accidentally come to one another, and prayer works that way best. Thank you, Jan. Thank you, God.
It's great that when we share our faith, just in a matter of course, we meet some lovely people. Well, Elaine, I may come and have my nails done next year. Now, we live in a green and pleasant land where water is abundant, even though in this part of the country it's quite dry. But, so many people are without water in this world today. We buy bottled water, as many people do, for our offices, and Christian friends told us of a company who supply water, and out of that they give charity aid into Malawi. The whole thing started when a lady was selling water door to door, pedalling around on her bicycle, and she was able to collect a whole lot of money through that for Malawi. And so let's go to John Searle as he tells us now what has happened as this company has expanded and grown.
My name is John Searle. I'm the father of the managing director of Cooler Aid here. I myself was invited to go to a country called Malawi in Central Africa in 1998 to speak at the synod of an indigenous church with about 500 branches. And when I saw the state of things in Malawi and the poverty of these pastors and their commitment and the number of orphans, I came home in total shock, and I said to my family, look, I'll go back to Malawi and I'll buy some land and I'll get all the local people making bricks and we'll build a village for orphan children. They said, Father, you're mad. And I went and bought some land. And we got the people making bricks, and once they'd made about 500,000 bricks, they looked at me and they said, where shall we build the first house? And I said, where does the sun rise? And they said, over there. I said, well, it's got to face the sun, the rising sun, because this is a new day. But what's it going to look like? I said, give me a piece of paper. And I drew the first house, build that. And that's exactly how it started. And from that, we have a large village now. We have 120 resident orphans there and 400 daycare orphans. We have a school, we have a clinic, we have a farm, we have irrigation project, we have a joiner shop. We have 12 other large centres, and we are actually looking after, feeding and clothing 4,000 plus orphans at the moment, including elderly people, lame people, blind people. 1 in 7 women in Malawi will die in childbirth. And some of our children, who are now 10, 11 years old, came to us as infant rescue. We also have a vocational training scheme. I remember the first of our girls who passed her MSc, which is the Malawi Senior Certificate of Education. I went to a place called Belila, which was where one of our schools were, And the teachers ran out and said, Miriam's passed her MSc. And I was so thrilled, and they were clapping and so on. I said, well, what is she doing? Oh, she's sitting. What do you mean sitting? She's sitting at the village. I said, why? Why doesn't she get a job? Oh, MSc is no qualification for a job. She will need vocational training. And my heart sank because I realized what I'd bitten off here, and that there were going to be hundreds and hundreds of our children who were going to need vocational training to be fit to go out into society and have jobs now. We have one girl who's a legal assistant in Salima. We have innumerable nurses and teachers. At the moment, we have 100 young people undergoing vocational training at Teachers Training College, at medical school, bricklaying, carpentry, motor vehicle mechanics, librarians, journalists. And I walk through Blantyre, and young people come up to me whom I've never seen in my life before, and they say, Pastor, I'm so-and-so, so-and-so. I'm one of your vocational students. I've got a job just down the road. I'm a motor vehicle mechanic. And you know what? I'm supporting 16 of my relatives.
I would like to mention that this is not an ad. We actually think it's really wonderful that companies want to help. And John was telling us that tens of thousands go every month to Africa because of the water sold nationwide. So you can help, you can pray for them. And if you buy water, well, you know, you could help buying it from there to help folk in Africa. But you might think this is a success story. Well, it is really, but we all go through hard times. And this year in April, they had a real big setback.
We got a phone call to say, your premises are on fire. And my sister Priscilla, who's been to Malawi with me several times, who's a retired teacher, and I drove out to Sawston, and I said, I hope we don't see smoke in the sky. I hope it's just a small, inconsequential fire. And as we neared the place, we saw this great black pall of smoke covering the sky, and these fire appliances, and the steel doors just collapsed like paper. It was just unbelievable, and my sister was weeping, saying, why is God allowing this? What about the babies? What about the children? What about the blind? What about the crippled people? What about the schools? And as we watched it burning, I got so heavy in my heart. I said, Priscilla, look, we've got to go. And my wife was on her way in her car, and I phoned her up and said, don't come, Stella. Don't come here. It will break your heart to see this. And so she turned around and went home. Now, my son was actually at Wembley Stadium watching Manchester United losing the Charities Cup to Manchester City. And on his way home, somebody phoned him and told him what had happened. And he swung by, as he put it, and looked at the warehouse. And by this time, it was just a blackened shell. And on his way home, he rang me up. And he said, have you seen the warehouse, Pa? And I said, yeah. Isn't it dreadful? Oh, don't worry. God will do something. He said, everything will be all right. The Lifeline Fund won't suffer. Don't you worry, Pa. And I found it a great struggle to take on board what he was saying. The next day he came here. This was on Sunday. He came here. Our accountant has got the office next door, and he phoned John and said, look, there are some empty offices in the old station at Newmarket. I'm sure they'd suit you. And he came here and had a look round, and he said to himself, this is perfect. Do you want to see the owner? The owner is an old gentleman over 80. He came down. They shook hands. He said, normally we would need to have references and so on and so forth, and a proper lease drawn up, but we can do that in time to come. Do you want to move in now? So John said, yes, well, since you know this accountant, who's a personal friend of mine, here are the keys. So I moved in. I came up the next day. All these desks were here. The computers were in. The phones were on. He's a dynamo, John, of course. And on that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday of that week before Good Friday, we had record sales and 109 new customers. And that was what God did. And you can look around these offices now and see this place. Ever since then, the donations have increased dramatically. So you see, our God cannot be defeated by setbacks. No. Yeah. That's my message. That's what I know. And that's not talk. That's experience. All right.
My, that's a heartrending story. What must they have felt when they had a look at that and they thought of all those things going on in Africa? But, you know, God is so good. He's turned the situation around. And I understand that their offices are nearly finished refurbishing and they'll soon be moving back in again.
And they got more business out of it. You see, God always, you know, what we say is you either get bitter or you get better. And from every situation, we believe we need to pray that God would make things better and move things on. Now, my next question is, how far do you have to go for water? I remember my mother, a bit of an entrepreneur really, she was quite clever, and she had this lovely cottage in the country, but she had to go a quarter of a mile to get the water. So what she did was she said to the neighbour, shall we get a cart? I'll buy it if you go and fetch the water. So she had the initial outlay to buy this water cart, just a couple of wheels like a wheelbarrow with a tank on it. And neighbour used to go and fetch all the water, but he was glad because he didn't have to carry buckets on his shoulders any longer. So that was actually in the village where we live now, but the other end of it. Anyway.
So do you remember when the water was put in?
Oh yes, I can remember. No electric, no water in this village. Absolutely, yeah.
Amazing.
We've got this amazing story now from John about the pastor's wife who had to go so far to get her water.
We built this church at Choda, and I noticed that the pastor's wife looked very weary, and her children were very wan and weary as well, and all the children in the area and the women, and I just asked her, where do you get your water, Mai? And she said, 5 kilometres away. Now can you imagine walking 5 kilometres to get water? And this woman would set out at 2 o'clock in the morning, she had 4 children, and walk 5 kilometres, and the reason she went so early was that there was always a queue at the borehole. And then she'd walk 5 kilometres home, and she'd heat the water for washing the children to be ready to go to school, making them some porridge and so on. And then she'd set out and go back again. And she went 3 times a day carrying 25 litres of water with a baby on her back. I said, we can't have that. I said, I'm going to drill a borehole here, right in front of this church that we're building, right by your house. I didn't have the money, but I called up the drilling company. I said, I want you to drill a borehole at Choda. So, and I'm going home in 2 days. I said, so get out there and you reconnoiter and see if you can find water. And when you've drilled the borehole, you send me the bill by email and I'll pay you by electronic transfer. And I didn't have any money. And I came home and I was biting my nails. And I'd been home for about 2 weeks and I got this bill, £2,300. And I closed the computer and I said, Lord, what am I going to do about this? What have I done? And the phone rang, and a friend of mine from another town, Isleham in Cambridgeshire, said to me, John, could you use £2,000 for a borehole? Actually, he said, it's £2,012. It's come from somebody I don't know, 2 people in Switzerland, and the £12 has come from their son, who'd been saving his pocket money, and they want to pay for a water project in Malawi. And I said, Colin, are you pulling my leg? And you see what God does? He uses even our foolishness. I mean, it wasn't really faith, it was just sheer compassion for the woman that God saw and God honoured, really. He's just brilliant. The Lord is just utterly brilliant. And I'll tell you something, I can tell you one story after another, and every single one of these children who have come into our care have got stories behind them.
Isn't it great to see how that company is making a difference through the charity in Malawi? When we'd finished at the company, I asked John to tell us how he came to know the Lord Jesus Christ. And he spoke to camera for about half an hour, and the tears were pouring down my face, actually, because it was so touching. But quite amazing. He was a child of a missionary couple who did great things for the Lord. But he himself didn't actually come into that relationship with Jesus until after he was 40. But now we're going to another testimony. This time it's Mike Coleman, who is the CEO of Aid to Hospitals Worldwide.
I realised that God never wasted anything. I had a military career. I started very early on, going down the mines when I was 14 and a half. Then I went into the army, and again I wasn't a Christian then. As a result of that, I saw a lot of action in various countries, and then came back. And then God got me 35 years ago, and that in itself is a miracle. I was running a company in Norwich, and it was my company, and it was sales and marketing, electrical equipment. I had a couple of guys came for interviews. One of them was an American called Chris Davis. Chris, in fact...
Unbeknown to Mike, Chris was a Christian and a pastor. And after a while, he started a church in Mike's offices. After many invitations, Mike went to church.
He said to me several times, you know, you're not happy in what you're doing. I said, I was very happy. I mean, I was turning over quite a lot of money. My wife had a car and I had a car, both Mercedes, and we had 2 homes and three holidays a year, and I was pretty happy, I felt. But I was very organised, and being in the ex-military, I know exactly how to organise men, and I know exactly how to get things done. So my officers were running like little clockwork oranges. They were really doing very well, to the point where I didn't really need to come in until about 11 o'clock. But I did go back to the church 3 or 4 times more, and God touched my heart at that church, at my officers, in fact. But I was aware that God was working in my life because I knew about him. I knew more about him. I started to think about him more. Didn't pray too much, but then I got in my car one morning and went towards Norwich. I was based in Croxton in Norfolk. Went towards Norwich, and on my journey there to Norwich, I got to where the racetrack is. I can't remember what it was called, but it was on the A11. There was nothing in front of me for miles, and there was nothing behind me for miles, and that made me feel weird, and I felt very peaceful about it. But I said, God, if you are real, please come into my life. And my body lifted out of my body and was on the bonnet of my car, and that was quite a shock. And I thought, whoa, can't deal with this, and I pulled in, and there was a lay-by right in front of me, and to this day, I pass that lay-by now and know that's where I accepted God into my life. I cried, and I felt the love of God surround me, and I felt the peace of God. And I prayed for the first time and accepted Jesus into my life. I went to my offices in Norwich, and asked Anne, my wife, to come in to my office, and I said, the Lord has touched my heart, and I've become a Christian today. Well, you'll have to get her story there. Her story was quite something. 7 years, 8 months, and 3 days later, my wife accepted the Lord. And that's another story. That's how God. And I did change. In fact, I feel that the person I was to the person I am now, God has literally put his arm inside of me and pulled me inside out and rebuilt me from the inside out.
Wow, Mike Coleman's testimony there is just amazing. And do you hear those words? That God turned me inside out.
It's amazing how many of us can say, God turned me inside out or upside down or changed my life, the course of my life completely. And yeah, that was just such a great story. You know, Jesus said, didn't he, that he came to give us life in all its fullness. But he also said...
My favourite verse, isn't it?
It is your favourite verse. And also he says that the old has gone, the new has come.
That's right. So transformation. Absolutely. When we know Jesus Christ, it transforms our lives. And if you don't know Jesus, we would just ask you, at the end of this programme, just ask Jesus to be Lord of your life. Say, I'm sorry for leading life my way, and from now on, Jesus, show me the way to go. And he will.
And Jesus said that when we come to know him and he takes control of our lives, then the old has gone and the new has come. The Lord gave another message to Jeremiah. He said, "Go down to the shop where clay pots and jars are made. I will speak to you while you are there." So I did as he told me, and found the potter working at his wheel. But the jar he was making was marred in the hand of the potter. So the potter squashed the jar into a lump of clay and started again. Then the Lord gave me this message: "O Israel, can I not do to you as this potter has done to his clay? As the clay is in the potter's hand, so are you in my hand."
But then my dream
So, are you allowing God to mould your life? Are you allowing him to come in and change you? You know, we use the expression too, don't we, of are we letting God into every area of our life, like every room in our home, or are we just kind of keeping him at the front door, not letting him in? So as we let God into our life, so he can mould us and change us, as that potter was changing the lump of clay into something beautiful, God wants to make you something very beautiful.
And I would say too, you might say, oh, but I've messed up. I can't come back to God now, he doesn't want me. Well, that's so untrue. And as we come back and we give ourselves back to God, he makes us into something beautiful. Remember, God is a God of another chance.
Yeah.
And so thank you for being with us today. We hope you've been blessed by the programme. Be encouraged, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. God bless.
Please remember, if you have a story to tell of God's goodness and power in your life, if you've written a book or composed a song, we'd love to hear from you at Be Encouraged, British Christian TV, Buxall, Stowmarket, IP143DX. Info@britishchristian.tv.